Lieutenant Sanders and His Stash. Written by Johnny Fist. Heavy rain was pouring down. Night had firmly taken possession of the earth and wouldn't let even a good master send his dog outside. Even the cars passing along the road, scattering raindrops in all directions, slowed down just to make out oncoming vehicles. Rain under the cover of night can be either a loyal ally or a vicious enemy, but not for Colonel Sanders. For him, such weather felt like a mother's embrace. He slowly raised his head, soaked through by the rain, and fixed his gaze on the sky. In his eyes was a question. Is that all you've got? The rain didn't scare him. He was a hardened fighter. Navy SEALs, Purple Star. He had been trained for every condition of existence and survival. This was supposed to be an easy walk, but everything turned out far more complicated. When Colonel Sanders served in Vietnam, he managed to locate a hidden insurgent cache. Gooks, whatever you want to call them, a place where money and weapons were delivered, weapons to shoot back, money to buy those very weapons. As everyone knew, money never stayed long in places like that. It was used up immediately, so they had to act fast. They hit the location. Sanders, Grindelwald, and Fulbright. Those were the three who managed to find stacks of green bills among heaps of corpses and mud. They didn't count it. Too dangerous. 3 platoons were stationed at that point, but could they share with anyone else? The answer was no. There was so much money it was unclear how to pack it without raising suspicion. While everyone else was loading weapons, they were loading money into crates. It had to pass for weapons to avoid attention, and that's exactly what they did. They packed everything they could into a single craft and moved out. All night the American army celebrated the raid, but not those 3. When everyone got drunk, they went to the warehouse and found their crate. There were only a few hours left before dawn. Enough time, they figured, to roughly count the money and decide where to hide it. An hour later, the approximate sum was clear. $1,270,000 US. Even considering their pay, this was enough to live out their lives. After drinking to their luck, the 3 brothers in arms stuffed the money into their military bags. The agreement was simple. If one of them died, the survivors would pass his share to his family. Each of them had one. They all agreed. But this was the army, and temptation was great. For a week, the 3 moved through the jungle, knowing what they carried. They managed to survive while parts of their unit gradually, relentlessly, fell under Vietnamese gunfire. They chalked it up to luck. Grindelwald kept repeating that the Lord did not want them dead. He wanted them to live long lives in His glory. Damn fanatics, just what they needed out there. The cleverest of them was Fulbright. He knew, everyone knew, that the wounded were evacuated every couple of days by helicopter. He planned everything, down to the smallest detail. The whole unit was sent out light for reconnaissance. No bags, just weapons. All the bags stayed at the rally point. The 3 of them moved into the jungle with the rest. Fulbright led. He had calculated it all. About 30 meters ahead of the others, he spotted a small group of Vietnamese civilians. To hell with human lives. He pulled out a grenade and threw it. The explosion tore them to pieces. Immediately, automatic fire erupted from both sides. Fulbright fired 2 shots from his own rifle into his leg and screamed. He knew that while everyone else was under fire, he'd be pulled out of the line. It was perfectly planned. Grindelwald and Sanders couldn't have imagined such a scenario. When you're in dense jungle at dusk, under fire, you think of nothing but survival. Sanders and Grindelwald, like the others, returned fire. A medic dragged Fulbright away, hauling him back to the rally point. Fulbright knew a helicopter would arrive soon, and it did. While the others fought for their lives, Fulbright was brought to the rally point where 2 more units had gathered their wounded. He grabbed 3 bags and crawled with the others toward the helicopter. They had to evacuate quickly. He already knew how he'd explain the bags. He'd say they belonged to Derek Fishburne and Jerry Lewis, both killed 2 days earlier. Soldiers had a habit of sending the dead men's belongings to their families, and just like that, all the money ended up in Fulbright's hands. He was loaded onto the helicopter and flown away. For him, the war was over. He came out of it crippled, but rich. Grindelwald and Sanders survived the firefight, but when they returned to base, they found neither Fulbright nor their money. Everything became clear. Their duty now was to survive their service, or return home the same way, and find Fulbright, slit his throat like a dog, and take back the money. Unfortunately, Grindelwald didn't last even a week. He was shot. Sanders, with a head wound, was hospitalized and sent home. He spent months in a ward before being declared disabled and discharged. Unlike many Vietnam veterans, he knew how he would live from then on. His mission was to find Fulbright and take revenge. And that's exactly what he did. Fulbright, meanwhile, believed the other 2 would never return alive from Vietnam, so he celebrated his jackpot lavishly, drinking, smoking, enjoying life. But every night, no matter his condition, he woke in a cold sweat, fearing the door would burst open and Sanders and Grindelwald would storm in with knives, demanding their money. The fear consumed him. He stopped sleeping. His hand was always ready to shoot, 2 pistols by his side. He was losing his mind. To cope, he made what he thought was the only right decision. Bury the money temporarily so that even if Sanders found him, he wouldn't find the cash. One night, he went out into a field and buried $1 million 3 meters deep. It took almost the whole night and a bottle of whiskey. The rest he kept for expenses. After pacing out the steps, he left, calmer now that the money was hidden. Days passed more easily. He believed that even if they found him, they wouldn't kill him before learning where the money was. Everything was fine until Tuesday. He opened his eyes after a long binge and saw Sanders standing before him, a bandage on his head. In his right hand was a large army knife. On the table lay some of the unhidden money. Fulbright was too drunk to think clearly. Sanders, driven by a sense of injustice, repeated only 2 words. "Where's the money?" No matter how Fulbright tried to explain or stall, it didn't help. Sanders cut him. Vietnam turns men into beasts who can't think straight. He cut Fulbright again and again, first a piece from his leg, then his arm, one arm, then the other, then the second leg. Fulbright screamed, but no one came. During the months since returning, he had often screamed like that, from fever and memories. The police had stopped responding. In the end, he broke. He told Sanders to open the wardrobe and feel for a note hidden beneath a second layer of wood. Sanders found it. There were numbers on it. He didn't understand them, Fulbright explained. He begged for his life, promising to show the location. Sanders, though furious, agreed. They got into Sanders's car and drove. Dusk fell as they left the city. The rain started again, hard. It brought them back to Vietnam. Nights just like that, rain unending, sleeping on cold ground in uniform, waiting for the Viet Cong. Nothing had changed. 2 hours later, they arrived. Sanders dragged Fulbright's bloodied body to the coordinates. Even if he'd wanted to walk, Fulbright couldn't. He had lost too much blood, barely conscious. Sanders reached the spot, checked the coordinates. They matched. He dropped the body, took a shovel, and began digging. The rain didn't bother him. He wanted what was his. After 40 minutes, soaked through, his shovel struck something metal. That was it. Half dead, Fulbright turned his head toward the pit. His body was drenched, blood and rain painting patterns on the ground. He watched Sanders dig up his money. Sanders uncovered half the crate. Time to open it. He tossed the shovel aside. He recognized the box, one of those issued before deployment to Vietnam for personal belongings, lockable. This one had a lock too. Simple enough. Sanders knew how to pick it with a pin, and he did. His moment had come. If the money was there, he'd kill Fulbright and settle the score. If not, he'd bandage him up and make him suffer until he talked. With one swift motion, Sanders opened the lid. Yes, the money was there, packed in cellophane bundles, but he didn't notice the grenade attached to the lid. When he opened it, the pin was pulled. That hesitation cost him. The explosion tore Sanders and all the money into pieces. Fulbright wasn't hit by the blast, but it didn't matter. He knew he was as good as dead. Too much blood lost, too remote a place. No one would find him soon. The money went to no one. Lying there, he thought how this death was no different from the many he had seen in Vietnam. A comrade blown up by a tripwire, and you wounded, lying in the rain, bleeding out. All you can hope for is not to be taken prisoner. Better a quick death in the rain than a slow one under torture. Nothing had changed. It was the same there and here. To hell with it. Enough. Fulbright closed his eyes. That was it. The story of 3 men who tried to outsmart death had come to an end.